Hello, hockey fans, and welcome back to Marty's Illegal Stick, a hockey podcast. It's been a long time since we've done this. We went on a little break there. I know I've been busy on another show, 315 Hockey Live, and, there's only so many hours in the day. But, I missed this so much, and I had to get my buddies back together because there's so much NHL news that we need to talk about that we're going to talk about. Now, for a while, this show had been the Hockey History Podcast, which it still is. We're still on the Sports History Network. However, we're going to change things up a little bit because we want to be able to incorporate both the new and the old. So for segment one, we're going to be talking about the modern news here, the modern news in the NHL and beyond. And then in segment two, we're going to, of course, pick a little hockey history segment. We used to do that, the Zamboni Time Machine, which is always fun. So anyways, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you'll notice that I'm home. Normally I'm in Dave the Save's studio, but Dave the Save's wife is running for mayor here in Little Falls. So his time is very limited. So we're going to be running a home studio for this show for now. Anyways, I'm going to bring in my co-host. First of all, the guy who's been with us for the past few Martys here. We've been doing those best of the best segments, which are a lot of fun. My friend, my pal, and he is not a better hockey player than I am, Ed Stefaniak. What's going on, brother?
Scotty, I have international games under my belt, so I want some respect on my name.
Okay, well, we'll just call you Mr. Not a better hockey player than Scott. What's going on?
Nothing much, Scotty. Just hitting the grind. 2 leagues now. It's a ton of fun. Beer League All Star. If there was a Hall of Fame for Beer League, I'd be first ballot.
What are you saying? You would get the golden can?
I would definitely get the golden can. I want a golden Jofa though.
Yeah. Well, I have to give you credit. You actually have worn those in a B League game. So
I wore them in C League too, and
did you really?
It's an absolute nightmare. Sticks just flying everywhere.
Why does that not surprise me?
Yeah, no, it is brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
Oh boy! And our other co-host, brand new to the show. We got chatting a little bit online, and I'm like, this guy will be a perfect fit for Marty's Illegal Stick here. So I'm going to bring him in. He's Mr. Connor Weidman. Connor, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And you got another show yourself.
Yeah. It's called Get the Puck Out Podcast. I started about 2 months ago, I'd say. I wasn't really thinking about starting a podcast until I started watching other people do podcasts. But it's mainly about trash talk, different leagues, stuff like that. I do cover some leagues, but it's mainly AHL, ECHL, and other smaller leagues, and sometimes mixing with NHL.
Nice, very nice. And you were telling me you're a big Devils fan, you're a big Utica Comets fan, Adirondack Thunder fan. Ed here is a big Boston Bruins fan. So this ought to be a pretty interesting dynamic. I almost had another Ranger fan coming on to make this a real interesting show.
Oh, not your dad.
But he couldn't make it at the last minute. So we can talk about that later on. But anyways, since we're all here gathered and we're talking NHL, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the team's best or the league's best team so far. Surprisingly enough, it's the Boston Bruins. I'm looking at their record, Ed, and I know how big of a Bruins fan you are. They got 49 wins. They're only 8 losses.
Yeah, 8 regulation
losses. 103 points. That's incredible for this season.
It's insane.
Ed, why have they been so good this year?
Honestly, I think it's just the locker room. Like, you hear that sentiment of win one for Berkey, one more for Berkey, and that's what it's coming down to. I mean, the team's gelling, the depth on it. When you have Coyle as a 3rd or 4th line center, that's just incredible depth. And the trades they made this past trade deadline for Bertuzzi and Hathaway and Orlov. I mean, Orlov's on a tear right now. It's just this team likes each other, which is probably the most important part of it, is that the team actually is getting along.
Towards the end of last season, I remember we talked about this when Bruce Cassidy got let go. And a lot of Bruins fans are going crazy. They're like, oh, my God, what are they doing? What are they doing? How are we going to win without Bruce? Right? And then they bring in Jim Montgomery, who, you know what, I'm actually glad to see him back in the league getting a second chance at coaching after everything that happened to him in Dallas.
Yeah.
And it seems like that locker room, like you just said, they like each other. But it seems like I don't want to say the pressure's off because they're the best team in the league. But from what I've read in reports, it seems that there's not as much of a crack the whip as there was with Cassidy.
Cassidy was just an absolute like dictator of a coach. I mean,
Right.
you're seeing it in Vegas. You're seeing, you've heard stories of it when he coached in the AHL. He's very much a authoritarian coach, which it works. It's just a coaching style. You've seen, other coaches in the past. One for the Rangers in the '94 Cup. He was an absolute.
Mike Keenan, Iron Mike.
Iron Mike. He's an absolute just diabolical person. Babcock, who's a joke of a human, but he gets results. And he's so Cassidy has that style. Montgomery is very much laid back. He wants to be more of a friend than a coach, which personally for me that's what I like. Growing up playing, I liked those coaches a lot more, and it made me want to run through a wall for them. So that's probably what I'm thinking too. Is like this team has it. They had it last year. Did they want to play for Cassidy? And I don't think that's the case at all. Why play for somebody? Why keep somebody around if you don't like them?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think with Montgomery's style, he can get away with that because the Bruins have a very veteran group.
Yes.
I don't think if they were a young team, I think they would be kind of hard pressed with that. But you mentioned Hathaway and Orlov. I can't believe that the Capitals gave them away for basically a song and a dance.
Yeah.
That was pretty surprising considering that really Washington's still in the playoff hunt, but yeah, they do have to get younger too.
Yeah, and Hathaway would be a throw-in any trade in this league. He doesn't get points. He's very much just a gritty guy that you put out there just to really muck it up. But the Orlov aspect, I was really surprised by that. He's a very physical defenseman who gets points, and the fact that 75% of the salary has been retained is just music to my ears.
We're going to talk about that whole retention thing in just a minute too.
I think
that just put a thought in my head. But
Yeah.
before we go to that, Connor, I want to ask you, as the big hockey fan, you've been watching the Eastern Conference. Is Boston this good though? Because they made the changes at the trade deadline, but in the offseason, they really didn't do a lot. And all of a sudden, they've had this massive improvement. They're a very good hockey team, obviously, but are they 103 points with 62 games in good?
I would say so. I hate to say it as a Devils fan. I've been watching a couple of their games. They actually been playing pretty damn good. I think that they could go all the way. Like I said, I'm a huge Devils fan. I hate to say it, but I think they're going to be one that goes all the way this year.
Yeah, I mean, they did bring in Linus Ullmark. Was that 2 years ago, right, Ed?
Yeah, 2 years ago, Linus Ullmark.
Now, who knew Linus Ullmark was going to be this good this year? I mean, he's been ridiculous lights out this year. And obviously, whatever it is they're doing is working. For me, I mean, if you bet your money on Boston to win the Stanley Cup, I wouldn't say you made a bad bet at all. But I will say that the Eastern Conference is going to be a gauntlet to get through in these playoffs. And truthfully, there has been a lot, and I mean a lot, has gone right for Boston, and very little has gone wrong so far.
So my thing about the
because
playoffs,
McAvoy and Marchand came back earlier than expected, which really helped.
Yeah.
That helped big time. And outside of those two, there really, I mean, as far as I know, there really hasn't been any major injuries to deal with.
The DeBrusk injury was really
true.
But that was only 3-4 weeks, and he had a broken femur. Like that's superhuman.
Bionic.
So, and here's why I don't think the Eastern Conference is going to be that much of a gauntlet. I believe personally, look at round one. It's going to be Toronto, Tampa. They're going to bang on each other for 7 games. Absolutely just destroy each other for 7 games. And Boston's going to get who? Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Maybe Washington, maybe Buffalo. And just run right through them. So you're going to have a battered Tampa or Toronto going up against a fresh Boston. And same goes for Carolina. You're going to have the Rangers and the Devils just absolutely just destroying each other for 7 games. And Carolina's going to run through Buffalo, Ottawa, maybe maybe Pittsburgh, and then it's going to be the same thing for them. That Eastern Conference Final is going to be interesting, but round 2 is just going to be a dismantled team playing against a fresh team.
Well, I agree with you in the regards of Boston is definitely going to get the best draw in the first round, which they should. They've been the best team in the league. There's no doubt about it that they deserve to get the best draw. It's looking like it's going to come down to be New Jersey and the Rangers out of the Metropolitan. Of course, it's going to be Toronto and Tampa Bay in the Atlantic. But before we get into New Jersey and the Rangers, Tampa Bay suddenly seems to be stumbling. Now, is this the beginning of the end for Tampa? Because they have had one heck of a run. Very much so. But they're also starting to get a little long in the tooth. And let's be honest, just like the Chicago Blackhawks when they won their 3 cups, that team has played a ton of hockey over the past 5-6 years.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily the beginning of the end. It's going to be a long stretch, but you got to think it's three finals in a row. They deserve every break they can get right now.
Yeah, that's true. What do you think, Connor?
I don't know. I really don't. this whole thing is crazy. But I like Tampa. I think like what goes up must come down.
Yeah.
Like last year, I thought they're going to win the cup, but they didn't. But like you said, they've been very sluggish, I would say, and a lot of people have been talking about that. Are they going to start slowing down? But I think Tampa is going to come to a halt and not really get back in the swing of things like they used to be.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very tough for them, to be honest with you. And you just see that trade they made for Tanner Janot from Nashville. I like the player, but that was almost like a desperation trade for a guy that isn't putting up offensive numbers. I mean, he had a great season last year.
But do they need the offensive numbers? They have Kucherov.
Yeah, but I know. But if you're a team that's getting older like that, do you give up 5 picks?
Yeah.
After that player, I'm sorry you don't do it, and not in my opinion.
Well, that's the thing are those 5 picks going to absolutely change the franchise? They're just magic beans, really. You don't know what they're going to become, but you know who Tanner Janot is, and you already have pieces that could win. So you're mortgaging that future to win again now. But in 5 years, Tampa's going to be bottom of the league.
Right, because don't forget they gave up 2 first-round picks in that Brandon Hagel trade last year.
So. They last year with that Brandon Hagel trade, they absolutely already admitted that they want to win now, and that their window is not necessarily closed yet, but it's on the way down. Might as well sell the house to get a few more cups in.
Well, I mean, I guess, but I don't know. I understand what you're saying about the magic beans part, because there is such a thing as having actually too many prospects because you only have enough room.
Yeah.
Right. There's only so many spots, but you also have to keep your prospect pool replenished. And to me, like I said, I don't mind them getting Tanner Janot at all. I'm just the price they paid. And to be honest with you, with this trade deadline, some of those prices were ridiculous.
Yeah.
They really were. They really were.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Sold high.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of trades, so now we're going to come right down Connor's specialty here. So obviously, we're up here in upstate New York. There's a lot of Rangers fans around. There's a lot of Devils fans around. So let's talk about a little bit because both of those teams made big trades. The Rangers went out and got Vladimir Tarasenko and Patrick Kane. Well, the Devils went and got Timo Meier. That was the team that he was rumored to be going to for about 2 months.
Yeah.
And then it finally happened. So, Connor, tell me what you think about. Let's start off with the Timo Meier trade. Did the Devils pay too much to get him?
You want my honest opinion? I think so. See, my thing when it comes to like the hockey, like you said, prospects, stuff like that. Like I was a big Zetterlund fan.
Oh, my daughter too. She sobbed for 2 days.
When I saw that, I was not happy. Because all the rumors was rolling around of who they're going to send over, and then it finally dropped. But it's hockey, it happens, and hopefully he does well down with the Sharks. But I think they did a little bit overpaid for him. I mean, he had played only how many games so far? 2, I think, or 1, I think. I
Yeah,
don't
Yeah,
2.
2-1.
ever since he came over, because I think he did have I think he was injured, I do believe, like, correctly or something like that.
Right.
Want to play him so quickly. Um, but it's 50-50, to be honest. I think they did overpay way too much, but we'll see in the end. Just hopefully they can retain him in the offseason.
Well, that's going to be the key. So if, in my opinion, if they are able to re-sign him, which I think they will, then what they paid, honestly, to me wasn't all that bad. I mean, I hated to see Zetterlund go too for my daughter's sake, because I got my daughter, you guys don't even understand, totally in love with Fabian Zetterlund, from our Utica Comets, connection, because we're right outside of Utica. So once she stopped sobbing, and but if you really look at what they give, I'm surprised that they were actually able to get Timo Meier without giving up Alexander Holtz, without giving up Dawson Mercer, without giving up Shimon Nemec. Honestly, that's not a bad deal. That really isn't. I mean, I liked Andreas Johnson. I did. He was doing great in Utica. I like Nikita Hotuk. I love the guy. Hard-hitting defenseman, very physical. But let's be honest, with that New Jersey blue line, where's the room? Because you got Luke Hughes coming as well. And they've already said he's not going to Utica. When his season in Michigan's done, he's going straight to New Jersey.
Yep.
So if you can make a move for a player that's 27 years old, like Meier is, and again, like I said, the caveat there is they have to re-sign him. If they can re-sign him and get him signed to another 7-8 year contract and keep him around, then you gotta applaud him for doing what they did. Now, I know there's some people that are freaking out because he hasn't scored, and it's, oh my God, what did we do? Well, it's 2 games in. It's 2 games in. Relax. And honestly, it's reasons like that I actually wish that they would move the trade deadline back to, say, the beginning of February. Because, to be perfectly honest with you, and we'll talk about the Rangers in just a second, I think that it's actually kind of ridiculous to have the trade deadline be that late. Because if you're going to, spend all this draft capital and roster capital to get these big name players, Eddie, 15, 20 games is not enough to get used to your new team. So if you don't click right away, then if you're planning on making that big trade to win the cup that season, that's why oftentimes it blows up in teams' faces, because there just simply isn't enough time to adjust. It's that
especially when you get a big piece like Kane and Tarasenko, which Tarasenko is working out, but
don't forget they got him in January, right?
Early February.
Okay.
Mid-February. So he has a little bit more time, but he paid off right away. But like Timo Meier at the deadline and Patrick Kane, 20 games is not enough.
No.
Nowhere near at that level, nowhere near enough.
No, not at all.
Learning a whole new system, learning a whole new coach on the fly, like it's gonna, that's why you see teams that make these big trades. Sometimes they fall on their face.
Exactly.
It's just natural.
Absolutely.
That chemistry is important.
I can't believe we're agreeing.
Well, you know what? Sometimes it happens.
But let's talk about the Rangers for just a second, because I think that the Tarasenko trade is starting to work out, because, like I said, they got him earlier. He's had enough time to get acclimated. They went out and they landed the other big fish, Patrick Kane. But 2 thoughts on that. Now, one, of course, if you can get a chance to get Patrick Kane, you go get him, because the guy's a legend, definitely a surefire Hall of Famer, no doubt about that. But is he really what the Rangers needed? Because the Rangers can score goals. Let's just, they can score goals left and right. But to win in the playoffs, you need grit. You need to have a gritty line. And do they really have that?
So, and here's my thought on the Rangers. They are grittier than what we expect. When you have Trouba and Kreider, who are 2 of the grittiest players, and one of the, definitely Trouba being the hardest hitting player in the league right now. I think they have, not enough grit, but, for their situation, a good amount of grit. But other than that, they're not going to get past, Boston, or they're going to have a hard time in New Jersey. It's stating the facts. They have the 2 gritty players, and that's it.
Can they beat Carolina?
Not a chance.
There's no
Connor,
chance.
what do you think?
There's no chance of them being Carolina.
Not a chance of them.
Not a chance. They have the grit, but I have to agree with Ed that they don't. I don't think so.
Yeah, that's
just no. Patrick. I don't think Patrick Kane. Not. He's not. Not to say he's not fitting well. I just don't think he's really fitting in that mesh in the Rangers organization right now.
right.
I mean, he come from Chicago, which losing streaks, of course.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, they haven't won since they picked up Patrick Kane.
No, and again, it takes time. And they're talking that he's going to be playing with Artemi Panarin, who he's very familiar with, of course. But again, it takes time. And I want to address something else too, because what really bothered me about that trade. I don't care that he went to the Rangers. Whatever. Hey, great, good for them. But to get him, somebody had to retain 75% of that contract because that's how close the Rangers were.
Yep.
So obviously Chicago retains 50%, but now all of a sudden Arizona, which is basically like the dumpster of the league, somehow manages to retain 25% of a contract on a player that's never ever going to suit up for them or even be a part of their organization this season. To me, that's not right. I'm sorry. And I listen. It's a loophole in the CBA. If you can get away with it, hey, absolutely good for you. Great. But to me, that's something that the league needs to take care of. And obviously they can't do it until there's a new CBA. But that's ridiculous. That all of a sudden, because to me, why have a salary cap? What's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
What is the point? If you can just sit there and say, oh, well, hey, listen, you want a draft pick? I know you got a lot of cap space and you're not going to make the playoffs. So here, take part of this contract somehow and we'll make it work. To me, I'm sorry, that just reeks of cap circumvention.
I agree.
That really does.
Completely agree. And like you said, as of right now, it's a loophole in the CBA, so get away with it all you can. But if they don't do anything to fix this, you're going to start seeing ridiculous trade after ridiculous trade. Like, it's going to be just an absolute just nightmare because you're going to be sitting there just looking at it, being like, who went to who, what. How did Toronto afford that many players this deadline? Yeah. I know, right? It's a joke,
right?
It's an absolute joke.
It is. And why bother? Why even bother with it? And I'm glad you actually mentioned Ryan O'Reilly because here we're talking about big trades, giving up big assets to get players, and all of a sudden, and it's something that you can't help as a part of the sport. But now he's on LTIR with a broken finger.
Hey, listen. It serves him right.
Okay, you got to tell me why.
I hate the Maple Leafs.
Oh, okay. Oh, that makes perfect sense as well.
What does a Maple Leafs fan do after they win the cup?
We don't know.
Turn off their Xbox and go to bed.
I mean, that's the only way they win a cup on Xbox.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I'm sorry. I agree. I don't like Toronto. I don't like Austin Matthews.
Yeah. No, I love
I can't
Austin
stand him.
Matthews.
I cannot
love
stand
Austin
him.
Matthews. He's I love Austin. I love Poppy. I hate Maple Leafs fans. They're the absolute worst. Maple Leafs fans are.
Do you think that Gary Bettman is trying so hard to help Arizona, the Coyotes, that is, in any way he can, in the hopes that when Matthews becomes a free agent, he goes to Arizona, where he's from, and saves that franchise?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't he? Apparently they have this 10-year no movement clause that when the team got bought recently, that was the NHL made them sign that. So we're dealing with another 8 years of Arizona, and on top of that, the teams they're allowing them to take these contracts just to hit the cap floor, just so they can go out and afford players like Austin Matthews and draft Connor Bedard. If Connor Bedard is 100% going to Arizona in the draft, he is 100% getting drafted by the Arizona Coyotes.
I don't know about that. What do you think, Connor? Not Bedard, Connor Weidman.
I think so. I think he would go there. I mean, my question is Are they ever going to get their own arena again?
Yeah,
Are they like watching their games on TV in a college arena is ridiculous. I mean, it looks like I'm watching a high school game at times.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen more electricity I've seen a more electric crowd at Minnesota high school games that I've seen on ESPN Plus. So they're working on an arena deal in Tempe, I want to say.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
So like it's all but greenlit. The question is, are the owners gonna pay the bills? Are they gonna keep the lights on? That's why they're in this situation to begin with. They didn't pay the bills. They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't go out there and they didn't pay. They didn't pay the rent. They didn't pay whatever it was, and now they're stuck in a college arena. I mean, Arizona's an absolute joke. The league needs to get a better ownership group in there.
Well, let me ask you guys a question because you just mentioned Connor Bedard, and of course, there's all the talk of the league is teams are tanking for Bedard.
Yeah,
it reminds me of 2015, right, when all those teams were tanking for Connor McDavid. Yeah. Well, let me ask you guys a question. In the NHL these days, with the lottery system in place, is it really worth it to tank? Because I did a little research on this, and in the past 15 drafts, the last place team in the whole league has drafted first overall only 7 times. So if you're, I understand the difference between knowing your team's not going to make the playoffs and let's just get as many assets as we can. But is it really worth putting out basically, let's say, an AHL team to tell your fan base that, hey, we're doing this because we want to get the next generational talent? Because if you remember, like I said, when that happened with McDavid, because there was 6-7 teams that year.
Yeah, Buffalo
was the first the one that came to mind. I mean, they pretty much had the ECHL out there.
Yeah.
God. And they ended up with Eichel, which
let's see how that worked out.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it wasn't that bad that year. I think they were like the 8th worst team. And they won the lottery.
Here's my thought on that. And if you look at the trends, Edmonton's gotten a lot of first overall picks. Buffalo's gotten what? 2. In New Jersey, big market, got a couple first overall picks. The Rangers, the one opportunity they had, they got a first overall pick. You think Bettman's going to let his baby, the Arizona Coyotes, not get the first overall pick?
Especially
this is their time.
A savior.
It's their time. Yeah, they were a smidge too good. This whole thing reeks of rigged. Look at the NBA. Look at the NBA. Patrick Ewing.
Yeah.
Right. What was it? The theory is that they had all the envelopes in the draft lottery inside of the bowl, and they freeze dried one of them so they knew which one to grab.
Could you imagine if it had stuck to the side of the bowl?
Yeah, that's actually the theory is that they freeze dried it right before so they could pick that one, and it'll say New York Knicks because they didn't want him to go to the Washington Bullets. You're getting the most electric guy in the draft, and he's going to play for the Bullets? No.
Well, yeah, but he did play for Georgetown, which is right there in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, but the league doesn't care about that. The league wants money. Imagine the Bedard Coyotes jerseys that'll sell off the shelf. They'll sell out in a minute.
They'll sell that 4,000-seat out arena in seconds.
Yeah. The league has a team on life support, and the only way to get them back off life support is to get Connor Bedard.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, that's for sure.
Mark my words. Sure. Arizona is getting the first overall pick because they're on life support, and it's Bettman's baby.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. You guys both think Arizona's going to get it. I somehow, some way think it's going to end up somewhere else, but we'll see. We'll see. That's going to be interesting for sure.
Well, that's the thing is Arizona this year is historically bad.
Yeah, but Ed, they're winning. I just looked, and I couldn't believe this myself. I just looked. They're actually better in the Western Conference than Anaheim, San Jose, and Chicago, which has really got to be freaking the NHL out. They're got to be going, guys, you're not supposed to be winning. Stop that. We're trying to get you Bedard, right?
Chicago's definitely not going to get it. They're going to put lead in that ball. So they're going to do everything they can to make sure Chicago doesn't get it because of everything that happened this past offseason. Anaheim, they're like, how are you not surviving with Zegras
Mason
all the
McTavish.
and Mason McTavish and all these players?
Yeah.
That's you're on your own. They're gonna put helium in that Arizona ball. They're just gonna inject it with helium so it floats right up to the top, and they pick it up and they say, Arizona Coyotes, your first overall pick.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see about this one. We'll see. All right. So I want to wrap this up, this segment here, with a little bit of wild card talk, because that Eastern Conference, especially,
It's
is going to go right down to the wire.
Yeah.
And while I totally agree with you guys in the regards that whoever does get in that wild card is going to have a very, very tough hill to climb, be it Boston or, as it looks right now, Carolina. But I'm just going to go over this real quick here. Right now, in the 1 and 2 wild card spots are the New York Islanders with 74 points, the Pittsburgh Penguins with 73. They're 1-2. Followed by the Florida Panthers at 70, the Ottawa Senators 68, the Buffalo Sabres 68, the Washington Capitals, who we just talked about, with 68, and Detroit still hanging around with 65, but I don't think they got enough runway left.
Detroit's done.
From Buffalo up is where it gets interesting. Now, here's what's really interesting, is that the Islanders have played more games than everybody else. They got 66 games in. So the Penguins have 63, so they got a little wiggle room. Florida's in that same boat the Islanders are. They got 65 points, and I'll tell you, they have been just a total disappointment.
Yeah.
After last season, what a disappointment they've been. What intrigues me is Ottawa and Buffalo. So they both have 63 games in, right? They're both trailing the Islanders by 6 points, and they have 3 games in hand. So believe it or not, the Ottawa Senators and the Buffalo Sabres still have a shot at this.
They still have the same record. So the win and loss columns.
Yeah, exactly.
Ottawa is going to claw and scratch their way into that playoff spot. Just seeing Brady Tkachuk challenge that whole Detroit Red Wings bench.
I love that.
And the team backing him. And that's the important part, the team backing him. He is going to drag them into a playoff spot. Brady Tkachuk is such an X factor for that team. And he wants to win, and he wants to win now. He needs meaningful games. When you're a captain and you are that young, you need meaningful games. It's important. And he is going to get them meaningful games. They may not necessarily make a playoff spot, but they're going to be playing for the playoffs with 5 games left.
Yeah, which is exactly what they need, really.
Because
Ottawa and Buffalo are not only similar records, but they're in similar positions with their fan bases, right? Their fan bases are fed up with the losing.
Yeah.
Absolutely fed up. Yeah. And they're finally starting to get people back in the building. And if you look at Ottawa, right, and when they made that trade for Jacob Chikrin from Arizona, I looked, I'm like, what are they doing making that trade? Are you kidding me? I mean, he was supposed to go to all the top teams. Remember, he was going to go to Boston. He was going to go to L.A. He was going to go here. He was going to go there. Then he goes to Ottawa. And then I looked, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Ottawa's still got a chance at this. And if you're in their situation, sure, you try to make that move. But Ottawa is going to have to start winning now. And I'll tell you, I like what they're doing because they're loaded with prospects. And I like what they're doing in the regard. They're saying to their prospects, okay, we've invested all this time and draft picks and all that into you. Now it's your turn. Now you got to prove it because they traded away their first-round pick getting Alex DeBrincat for this year. Next year's is gone in the Jacob Chikrin trade. So there is no first-round picks. But, Connor, is there a chance that the Buffalo Sabres could sneak into this?
I would say yes. The atmosphere, like if you watch their games, the atmosphere in that arena that has gone up, it's like they're in the playoffs. The energy in that arena, like I said, someone was talking about it somewhere else. I heard, and just the energy is changing in that arena out there.
Absolutely.
Like you could, like I watched a few other games as well, and I watched the game versus Edmonton. But I do think they'll make it. But it's gonna be. I think them and Ottawa is going to have to really battle this out.
I wouldn't be surprised if both teams make it. The Islanders have too many games played with too little points. They're realistically just they're in the position they're in because of the games played.
I mean, if you really do look at it, I think don't they have more games than some of the teams in the wild cards right now?
They have more games than every
more
team.
games than everybody.
Yeah, more games than everybody.
Yeah.
So they're realistically in the position they're in right now just because they've had more games, more
just volume.
Yeah, and the Penguins, they're a laughing stock right now. They did Dick all for that whole trade deadline. Who they get? Nick Bonino. I'm shivering. My timbers are shivered there. Nick Bonino. But it's so they're just their goal, the Pittsburgh goaltending situation, the lack of depth. Realistically, just the aging core mixed with the inexperience on the back end on their bottom six and their bottom four defensemen. I mean, they're a sinking ship. I realistically don't see them getting in whatsoever, especially with goaltending. So when you really break it down, Buffalo and Ottawa, I think you're going to sneak into those last two spots, and it's unfortunate they're going to be playing two juggernauts. Like absolute just units of teams, but that's what they need. You got to get to that level in order to get better. Because now you're going to be like, you're going to have these free agents who want to play with Tage Thompson and Alex Tuck. They want to play in that environment. It's
Dylan Cousins. I mean, Rasmus Dahlin having a career year. Owen Power looks like he's the real deal.
Owen Power. I mean, you got
Jeff Skinner's back.
You got that goaltender that's coming up, Devin Levi. He's nasty.
Yeah.
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, he's a solid goaltender.
He's got the best name in hockey. I don't care what anybody says.
Oh yeah, no. If there was hockey rules for Scrabble, I'd play him all the time.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you guys. And I'll tell you, I was out there in December for the LA game. It was December 13th. And unfortunately for me, being a Kings fan, that's where that turnaround started, if you recall. Right? So that game was 0-0 going into the third period. The Sabres scored 6 goals in the third period, and then they went on an absolute tear to climb back into this. But when believe me, I remember being there. It was horrible.
It was great.
But
I was only rooting for the Buffalo Sabres for you.
Yeah, I knew you were. I knew it. But anyway, but you know what? That building was half empty. And, there was just kind of this whole, we were supposed to be good. Here we go again kind of feeling. And now here we are 2 months later. And Connor, you hit the nail on the head. That building's electric now. It's packed. People are coming back. People are believing in the Sabres again, which, good for them. Because I've said this once, I've said it 1,000 times. They have a phenomenal fan base out there, and they deserve better. They deserve better than they were getting. So I'm actually very happy for them.
The Sabres are getting better.
I'm actually happy for them.
I just miss going on StubHub, buying $8 tickets to Sabres games on the glass, and then taking a $30 train out there.
Yeah, right. Well, I got a feeling those days are over for now, my friend.
Well, what? I could always go see a Devils game in 3 years.
Right. Well, we'll see about that.
Buffalo needs a championship out there.
Yeah, that's right.
They've never had one. They don't need a championship. They just need to think they just need to think that they need a championship.
I think they deserve it. I mean, not into bringing the football stuff. I mean, my dad's a Bills fan, so if my dad does watch this, he'll probably call me after this and stuff. But they have these teams that do great and then they choke. I think Buffalo could, hopefully this year. But I think if they keep up the way they're doing now, they'll end up in the Stanley Cup one day.
I went to college out there. And
you know what surprised me? I was really surprised at the trade deadline that they didn't go get another goaltender.
I think they should have.
No.
Because as much as I love Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, he's not the answer going in. Craig Anderson is great. I mean, he's a great story. But he's also 42 years old. They're not playing him every game because they can't, right?
But why go get a goaltender when you're going to have Devin Levi next year?
Right, but what I'm saying, go get a rental goaltender. They got enough draft picks. They got enough prospects that they're never going to get room for. They should have went and got Jonathan Quick.
Yeah.
Do you think Jonathan Quick would have went there?
He had no choice. There was no trade protection in his contract.
But that's the thing. He would have done to Buffalo what he did to Columbus.
No, he didn't. No, Columbus flipped him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they only flipped him because he's flat out told them, I'm not playing for you.
No, but you know what? Columbus knew they're not going to the playoffs either, so why not flip them and get some assets for them?
Now, you're a Kings fan, and I got to ask you, was that not the most disrespectful trade in history?
Absolutely not.
No? What was the most
Absolutely
disrespectful?
Not. And I'll tell you why. Because as much as I love Jonathan Quick and I loved everything he did for the franchise, at the end of the day, you have to make moves to make your team better. And he said flat out that he wants to play next season. So the Kings were in kind of a spot because they weren't going to re-sign him next year. It wasn't going to happen because they still got Cal Peterson that they got to manage to fit that contract in. And now you got Phoenix Copley that they signed for another year. So he was gone, right? And again, I love Jonathan Quick. Jonathan Quick had a 870 save percentage this season? 870? Now the Kings are on the verge of making the playoffs here, and they got a chance to make some noise in the Western Conference. So if you can move a player that, let's face it, he wasn't going to start in the playoffs. It was going to be Phoenix Copley. So why wouldn't you move somebody if you can get some assets back? Because the one thing that they desperately needed was a solid left defenseman. They don't have that in the pipeline. So they go and get that left defenseman, and they also get Eunice Corpusalo, who to me is a pretty darn good goalie. He was playing on a rotten team, which is another one. I'm surprised the Sabres didn't actually go after him too. But that notwithstanding. So I don't think it's disrespectful at all, to be perfectly honest with you. Because let's face it, Eddie, Wayne Gretzky got traded twice?
Twice, yeah.
So listen, people get traded. This is what happens. Now, did I like the way it was? I mean, it could have been handled maybe a little bit better, but at the end of the day, this is what happens. And listen, it's not like they traded him at the beginning of the season, right? There's 20 games left. So listen, I don't think it was really disrespectful at all. It hurts. There's no doubt about it. Of course it hurts. You never want to see a legend go. But Father Time always wins. And again, the Kings are in a position to win. Listen, they're not tanking for Connor Bedard. I almost said Mick Bedard. Jesus. Oh boy. All right.
Is it Friday?
Yeah, right. So no, I don't think that was actually. I really don't think that was disrespectful.
I can see.
We'll agree to disagree on that one, Scott, because I think that I was shocked because you just sent a legend to hockey hell.
So what though? So what? It's the end of the. What were they going to do? It's not like they were going to get a lot of assets from a contender, and it's not like a contender was going to take them. I mean, again, I love the guy. I love everything he did for the franchise, but you know what? He was having the worst season of his career, and at the end of his career. So if you can, and another thing too, don't forget that contract. He was $5.8 million for this season. Now I know it goes down with every day because of the salary cap and all that, but they had to create some cap space if they were going to improve that team. And if you're not going to play them, why not move them and move that cap space?
I'm just saying, when Vegas plays LA in the playoffs, it'll be very interesting.
I was just about to say that. That's going to be interesting.
He's gonna start game one and light you guys up.
I don't think so.
He's gonna get a goalie goal in the playoffs.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, you know what? You know what'd be really funny is if your Bruins play the Sabres in the first round and they light up Linus Ullmark. How do you like that?
Well, that's the thing. Linus Ullmark didn't really leave.
Sabres revenge.
No, that's the thing. Linus Ullmark didn't really leave unceremoniously. It was just
he wanted out of there in the worst way.
It was like mutual. But also, you got to think there's also kind of a curse on Buffalo right now. If you noticed, if every time they trade somebody or get rid of somebody, they go on to win a cup. Zach Bogosian, Ryan O'Reilly. There's a couple others out there. Like short time after they leave Buffalo, they just flourish.
Yeah, but you know what though?
That's why the finals is going to be Buffalo. Is going to be Boston, Vegas.
But I think it's hilarious that if you remember, Buffalo got maligned for that Ryan O'Reilly trade when it happened. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And look at all the assets that came back, and look what Tage Thompson's doing now.
Yeah.
You don't think St. Louis wouldn't like him back?
So I remember my buddy, he was during those years, like it was like the Buffalo just garbage years. And it was like, and he was flipping out about the team and he's like, and what did we get back? Tage fucking Thompson. And now I'm just texting him like, yeah, how's that,
How's that
about Tage Thompson now? The guy needed some more conditioning. Like let him you're rushing this. You want results now, and results now isn't always gonna happen.
No, and it usually doesn't, actually.
Never does. You know, you get a prospect like Tage Thompson. Yeah, you're upset that he's not flourishing right now, but you're looking at everyone else and laughing. Like it's where was that sentiment before?
It wasn't.
Yeah, no, it's just some of these local hockey fans just don't know.
Well, there's a lot of emotion involved with hockey too.
Yeah,
I
there
mean,
is.
like with any sport, you know. And listen, that's what you want. You want passionate fans, right?
Yeah,
Because otherwise, it's not fun anymore. If you don't have anybody yell and scream at, you know.
yeah, you're right about that.
So listen, I'm going to close this segment up by asking you guys one question and one question only, and I'm going to start with you, Ed. Give me a surprise pick out of the Eastern Conference. Who could actually turn some heads and go, "Ooh, I didn't think of them."
Nobody in the Eastern Conference. What you see is what you get. You know,
Okay, who's got the best chance to beat your Bruins then?
Carolina.
Okay, all right.
By
Fair
far,
enough.
Carolina.
And then you get murdered.
Carolina.
With all due respect, I don't think nobody's going to stop Carolina.
Really? Ooh, that's interesting.
I do. I think their goaltending can be shaky. I think their offense is a juggernaut. Their defense is a juggernaut. Their goaltending's their weak point. And if Anderson can't stay healthy, which he's known to get injured at inopportune times, it really is up in the air. And you know, it's hockey. People get injured. He's going to get injured like game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals and tear his quad, and he's going to break a thumb, and then he's going to get a type 3 concussion because he got out of bed wrong. Because that's Frederick Anderson. It's true.
All right.
I'm not wrong on that one.
Well,
and plus, Boston's had his number historically.
All right, Connor, your turn. Who can surprise us out of the Eastern Conference?
I'm just throwing this one out there.
Because it seems every year there's some Cinderella team that shocks everybody.
I'm gonna say Florida.
Oh, he's got Florida getting in. That's really interesting.
I'm gonna say Florida. I like watching. Both the Kachuk brothers. I love watching them play.
Could you imagine an Ottawa Florida playoff series? That would be a lot of fun too. Watching those two tangle.
Did you see today that Talbot's out for 3 weeks?
Who?
Ottawa's goalie.
Oh, Talbot again? Yeah.
Or a body injury.
Yeah. Cam Glass Talbot.
So that I was going to go with Ottawa until I just looked at that. So, but I am going to go with the Florida Panthers.
The Florida Panthers. He's got them getting in. Yeah, but you know what though? That's interesting because if they do get in, there is enough talent on that team to make some noise. And let's be real, Sergei Bobrovsky has been playing a lot better lately.
Oh yes,
and he is a 2-time Vezina Trophy winner.
They've turned it around since the All-Star break, and they've been playing a lot better hockey. I just don't think I think they're too far behind to really get started now.
Well, let's see. What did we say they got? Oh, they got 3 points to make up.
I think they do it.
But they got Pittsburgh got 2 games in hand. But you know what? It's going to depend on who goes on that losing streak at the end of the season.
I think
it's going to be Pittsburgh.
They always do.
Pittsburgh's going to go on a losing streak. I think they're going to fall apart.
Well, Pittsburgh's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, that's I can't disagree with that. I can't. I see them being one more injury away too from a major disaster.
I think they're.
You know, I see that.
That injury's coming soon.
So for me, I'm telling you, I got the Buffalo Sabres getting into the playoffs. And I think that they're not going to win a first round, but I'll tell you who I think is going to potentially make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, the New Jersey Devils. I really, truly believe that. And I think if there's a team out there that can give Boston a run, that can really scare the crap out of them, I think it's New Jersey. Because there's a wild card to play here, boys. There's a wild card to play. Like I said, Luke Hughes is coming in. And if Luke Hughes has the same effect on the Devils that Cal McCarr did when he came in, remember that right after the national championship?
So, yeah.
I think there's a puncher's chance there.
Or is he going to do the Hughes thing and be made of glass?
Well, who knows? He's bigger than Jack, so and Quinn.
I mean,
so,
my pinky.
So who knows, right?
I mean,
oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
I'll tell you what, Eddie. You know, we're gonna go to our Zamponi time machine here because
Ooh.
we gotta get something in for the Sports History Network, right?
yeah, we got to do
You're
some
gonna like this
history.
one. This is a Boston Bruins based one, so you're gonna like this a lot.
Ooh.
All right. So the Zamboni Time Machine is, of course, brought to you by SportsHistoryNetwork.com. You can catch all the Sports History Network podcasts and shows and all that on the Sports History Network on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. So anyways, this week, the Zamboni Time Machine takes us back to January 3rd of 1929, the night Eddie Shore drove all night through a snowstorm to play in a game. Eddie Shore played for the Boston Bruins and is widely considered to be hockey's first superstar defenseman. He was as rough as he was talented. And over the course of his career, he broke his back, collarbone, and hip. Every tooth has been knocked out of his head, broke his nose 14 times, broke his jaw 5 times, and had over 900 stitches put in his body. Despite all of this, Shore rarely missed a game. In Shore's era, teams traveled by train. Air travel was in its infancy then. The Bruins were scheduled to play a game on January 3rd in Montreal against the Maroons, and every member of the Bruins managed to make the train to Montreal except for Shore, who missed the train because of a traffic jam. The next train to Montreal was canceled because of an incoming blizzard, but Shore absolutely refused to miss the game. He reached out to a wealthy friend of his who loaned Shore the use of his chauffeur and limousine. As they headed north out of Boston, the storm hit and it was a doozy. The driver did not want to go any further, so Shore made him get out and take the passenger seat, and he took over driving himself. The pair found an all-night gas station where they bought some chains for the tires, but that did not help the visibility as the wipers froze to the windshield. Shore removed the top half of the windshield, and they continued through the night, driving through the sleet and blizzard conditions without the protection of the windshield. They had to stop and purchase another set of tire chains, and even with those, they still had to be pulled out of a ditch twice by people who happened to live nearby. Despite all of this, Eddie Shore arrived in Montreal at 5:30, just in time for the game at 7. Despite no sleep, numb legs, and a hands and face that were windburned by frostbite and windburn. Yeah, I just screwed that up, so I'm just reading this off. Shore talked the Bruins coach Art Ross into letting him play that night. The Bruins won 1-0 on a goal by, you guessed it, Eddie Shore. And that, my friends, concludes this week's trip on the Zamboni Time Machine. You know, I wish I'd actually printed that out because I'm looking at it off my phone. And when you get old like that gets hard to read because even my glasses on, stuff. But anyways, that is our Zamboni Time Machine. What do you think of that?
Eddie Shore is an absolute legend.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
a monster. Should have been put in prison multiple times.
Well, I'm surprised one of his because he bought the Springfield Indians after he got done playing of the AHL there. I'm surprised one of his players didn't kill him because
from my understanding, he sucker punched this guy so hard who played for the Maple Leafs that he forced him into retirement. Which I think, and I could be getting some players mixed up here. I believe because he retired, he died of a broken heart.
Could be.
There was another, because I know I've heard that story a couple times, and I've heard a Maple Leafs player, a Montreal Canadiens player, and a Red Wings player. 3 different players died from broken hearts being forced into retirement.
Yeah,
not all from Eddie Shore. Who was it?
Howie Morenz, Montreal Canadiens legend.
Right. Okay, so it was Howie Morenz.
Career ended because of a broken leg, and he just couldn't. He never got over it.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah, they legally killed him. The guy legally said he died of a broken heart.
Yeah, true enough. True enough.
That's right, Howie Morenz.
Well, boys, this has been fun. This really has. You know, we should do this again next week.
I like that idea, Scott.
What do you think, Connor? Should we do this again next week?
I'm down.
All right. Let's do this again next week. We don't know what date yet, but we'll play that one by ear.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. But we'll be back next week. So
that's one question for both of you.
Yeah.
Who do you think is going to make it to the finals?
Ooh.
The West.
Wow.
If you had to pick 2 teams right now,
Dallas.
as is, who would you think
Dallas.
would go?
Wow. Dallas.
Who'd you say?
Boston, Dallas.
Boston, Dallas.
Dallas is looking good right
That's one team I forgot about. Dallas.
Dallas is looking good right now.
Is it too late to change my answer?
Well, I want it to be LA so I can beat Scott up emotionally for it.
That would be so much fun.
I mean, I could
It
beat
would
you.
be. I would throw a party. If every game the Cup's in the building, I'm throwing a party.
You know, it's hard to pick against Boston right now, but I think Colorado is going to find a way to get back to the final.
I think they're too banged up.
Yeah, but you know what, though? There's still time for them to get healthy. Players are going to be back.
double repeat.
I don't think they're going to win it. I don't think they're going to win it. But I they'll find a way.
I know that we just seen in our lifetimes now, what, 2 teams repeat?
Right. Mm-hmm. I don't think
it's not going to happen a third time.
No.
But if they get healthy fast enough, sure, but
yeah.
I don't see it. I realistically don't see the team getting that healthy that fast.
Well, you never know. You never know.
Yeah.
But all right, boys. Well, that's it for this week. So for everybody out there listening, we want to thank you for listening. And like we just said, we will be back next week. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next week on Marty's Illegal Stick Hockey Podcast.